This year alone, there have been countless god-awful films, but what if I told you there was one, just one, that was so funnily bad that it might be one of the best movies of the year to spend with the boys having a nice cold drink? No? Well, then you just haven't seen The Crow 2024 remake. Now, before we dive into the new one, we gotta find out what was the original one really about. It's basically a dark metal music video turned to film, filled with nonsensical camera angles, a plot that makes you feel intoxicated without any beverage required, and I guess Joker vibes. So what did the remake do well? Did it capture the pure essence of metal the first one created? Absolutely not. For example, while the first one has these over-the-top cool kills, half of this film is just John Wick, while the other half is just a boring rom-com. Story-wise, we start off with Baby Crow, who unfortunately sees his horse die. He goes insane. I guess like 20 years later, he's at a mental asylum. Normal stuff. Meanwhile, you got this vampire guy who's whispering into people's ears and making them kill themselves or each other as a deal with the devil, where he gets an eternity of life, but he has to send innocent people to hell. So I guess one thing that this movie does do better is it does have more of a setup for both the villain and the romantic interest. We just get a lot more to work off of, so we understand the romantic intent in this one, versus the original sort of getting into the murder like right away. Now, speaking of the original and jumping to the elegant, dare I say, symbolic death of the Crow, how does it live up to the new one? Well, honestly, I would say it's still symbolic, but the man himself and his woman are subdued by two garbage bags, just placed over their heads, and they stop breathing, which is very different from leaping from a glass-stained window to your demise. Of course, now in the story, we get to see this sort of in-between world that the Crow is sent to. We find out as a result of Nosferatu's actions that his girl is sort of just sent to hell, which doesn't really make sense because normally they explain that it's when he does the little vampire whisper thing that people are sent to hell, but this one she was killed by a garbage bag, so I don't know what that has to do with her. Anyway, the Crow gets a deal where he gets to go back into the real world if he avenges her, in which she will come back to life. Now finally we get to see our boy in action. All right, how's the action? All right, I'm gonna list off all of the deaths in the first 30 minutes. We got shotgun, 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 knife, shotgun. He ends up shooting up an opera, which once again is just dripping with they wanted to make a John Wick movie. And of course, the movie pussies out when it can't show us main character deaths, but it can show us the deaths of all these random people that don't matter. Finally, the amazing Crow simply drives up to Dracula's mansion, holds a knife to the guy's throat, they do a little jig. They end up in that little in-between world. The vampire homie gets kind of sucked into the earth. And yeah, the girl's saved. Crow goes to hell instead because at one point he saw that his side piece killed someone, and that changed his mind. I mean, you can't really blame the guy. He's in this movie, he's known her for 3 days, by the way. It's like actually just 3 days. But look, in the end, is it terrible? Yes. Is it funny? Absolutely. The script is just filled to the brim with quotes that only Imagine Dragon fans could appreciate. The acting is terrible, the motivations don't make any sense. Like, the Crow goes from being dead serious to, thwipping Marvel one-liners, sticking a cigarette in a dead guy's mouth and going, hold that for me, thanks. And then we'll go from a dark, brutal sky to a beautiful bright blue sky in 5 minutes. Don't get me wrong, there's a few positives. I think, aside from the ones that I've mentioned, I think also the healing factor is done a lot better in this one. Just the effects they use when he's like putting guts back in his body, that's cool. I like that. The movie basically just has no idea what it wants to be, which makes it a perfect film to watch with the boys with a cold brewski. It gets an easy 2 out of 5.